February. You were a month. Hi, I'm Colleen Delaney. On this channel, I talk about books and writing, and today we're going to talk about the books I read in February. In the description, I always put links to my newsletter and books I've written because I am an author. And if you find yourself having fun today, please subscribe and hang out with me. February was a very, very weird month for me. Oh, this is going to drive me crazy. I have one gray hair. Just go down. I barely read. Not like barely, like I read. I've got books on my wrap up, but like I just wasn't finding time to fly through books, which I usually do. And each of these books, I have a different reason as to why, and I'll go through it with you. Because the answer is not, I didn't like these books. It's just what my life was doing. And also, in my defense, my husband and I very occasionally will binge watch TV shows together. And this month we decided to both watch the newest season of Love is Blind and the newest season of The Traitors. And that really, you know, it did elbow in on my reading time. And now Love is Blind is winding down. I'm getting back to my reading time. We still have a lot of The Traitors left. So I can't just blame my books. Some of it was my fault. I wanted to watch TV with my husband until I fell asleep a lot of nights. It's just what life looked like. So in February, I read 4 books. Considering the fact that I wanted to read like 7, that's pretty low, but it's better than 0. And we're gonna start with the one I enjoyed the most. I'm not gonna do this in my like least favorite to most favorite order that I usually do. Instead, I'm gonna do it the order in which I read them. So my first book I read in February was I'll Conjure for You by Cherish Reed. It's the second book in the Beck sisters Hauntings. And it's like a horror romance. I don't know how, there's like how there's romantasy, there's like horror romance, but I don't know how you pronounce it. You just put those 2 words together. And it's about Helen, who is kind of a new witch. Like she's recently found out that she's got some witchy undercurrents she could do some things with. She runs a bed and breakfast with her sister. And in the first book, she's a side character in her sister's romance, during which their bed and breakfast is haunted. In this one, we're following Helen. She also has ADHD, and you follow along a lot with how she lives her life due to this diagnosis. Our hero is Everett. Everett is a recent move back. Like he grew up with Helen, but he was living in Alaska, and he's just come back to town. He's currently working at his dad's hardware store, but he has aspirations to, instead of taking over the hardware business, take over his grandma's bakery. He also is, I'm not gonna remember exactly how old he is, but he's in his mid to late 30s, and he's a virgin, and he's demisexual, but he's been in love with Helen for years, so like the attraction is there for him on his part towards her. The book starts with a very fun, accidental Everett happening upon Helen doing a spell in the woods, and the spell goes a little wrong, and they now have this like lustful connection. Also, at the same time, Everett's grandma's house becomes, haunted's probably the wrong word, becomes the playground of a demon. And so the 2 of them have to figure things out, both in their relationship and how the heck they're gonna get this demon out of Everett's grandma's house. This took me like 7 days to read. Normally this would take me like 2-3 days to read, but my husband kept working at night. If you follow along a lot, you know that sometimes my husband works nights, and he was working almost every night that week. And it was too scary for me to read while he was not home. That is the main reason. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a very fun romance with a lot of paranormal twists and very spicy. But I couldn't read it home alone. I wasn't even home alone, but like my kids aren't gonna help. So I had to wait till my husband was home. And then finally when he was home, I was like, just stay home for a minute so I could binge read the last 100 pages of this book. But I really enjoyed it. And if you're not a scaredy cat like me, you could totally read it by yourself. So next I decided after reading that, I was like a little behind on the number of books I read. So I was like, oh, I'll read The Fury by Alex Michaelides because it's a thriller and it'll be super fast. And I read The Silent Patient and The Maidens both in like 2 days. And this was a really, really slow read, which is, I don't know, kind of odd. So before I go into the description, I'm first going to say I don't think this is a thriller. I think it's a mystery. And I think there's a very specific distinction between those 2 genres. And I personally prefer thrillers. I think a thriller is a book that once you hit a page, like page 150, page 200, you should not really be able to put that book down. I think the last third of a thriller, you should binge it in like, an hour and a half or whatever. That's how I feel about thrillers. Whereas mysteries, I feel like are a little bit more meandering and medium paced. The Fury is about a very odd friend group going to the Greek islands to like vacation. And our narrator is Elliot, and he's kind of an odd narrator. So this book uses I don't even know what the device is called, but like where the narrator is like clearly telling you the story. It's not like a normal narrator where you're like reading the story. He's like performing the story almost for you and keeps like breaking the fourth wall and like being like, well, you'll need to know this later. Well, this was the last time this happened. Well, this I knew was going to be important because, and I really didn't like that at all. I found the narration style, I don't know, it wasn't that as engaging, and I found it almost kind of like too quirky, I guess. I just didn't really like Elliot's voice, I should say, is the most important thing. There's like the twist. I read another review that said this, because it's such a slow build that by the time you get to the actual twist, you feel like you already guessed it because you've had so much time to go through so many possible twists, which is kind of how I felt. So I didn't really like this. I think I gave this 3 stars on Goodreads, or maybe 2.5. I can't remember. But after loving The Silent Patient and The Maidens, I was let down. I also did wonder if maybe I'm not someone who like binges an author. Like I don't read a series start to finish. Like I just don't do that. I like taking time in between authors' voices and reading other stuff. So I don't know if I read The Silent Patient too recent, because I think I read that in October. I was trying to remember. I think it was October because I feel like it was still nice out. And so part of me was like, am I just not into this voice because I recently read a book? But I mean, like, October was like 11 months ago. 10 months? No, not 11 months ago. October was like 5 months ago, 4 months ago. I don't know. It's been a while. It's not like I just read it last month. So, overall, a little disappointed. If he writes another book, I'll probably still read it because The Silent Patient and The Maidens were so good. But this one, I definitely, if you haven't bought it yet, I'd maybe skip it. Okay, so now we're 2 weeks into February and I've only read 2 books and I'm starting to panic. So I think to myself, what should I read? And I decided to read Get a Life, Chloe Brown by Talia Hibbert. And I liked this book. I don't read a lot of rom-coms. That's not really my forte. I don't mind, I read contemporary romance, but it's not usually like rom-com. And this is definitely a rom-com. You know how there's been like a lot of books lately that are pitched as rom-coms that aren't? I would definitely put this as a rom-com. There are some heavy stuff they deal with, but like there's a certain sense of, hijinks is the wrong word, but like rom-com behaviors. So our main characters are Chloe, who has a near-death experience in the prologue and decides to sort of change her life. She makes a list of all the things she wants to do. And then Red, who's her building manager, and he ends up kind of helping her with her list. So her list has, she wants to live by herself, which is the first thing. Chloe's from a very wealthy family in England and like super posh, and she gets her own apartment, and Red's the building manager. That's how they meet each other. So on her list is enjoy a drunken night out, ride a motorcycle, go camping, have meaningless but thoroughly enjoyable sex, travel the world with nothing but hand luggage, and do something bad. And so Red has a motorcycle, which is what kind of kicks off everything. And Red has already thought Chloe is very attractive when he's seen her, but he's also thought she's like kind of mean. So Red, on his end of things, I can't remember if I told you, I did not tell you this. Chloe has fibromyalgia, and it makes her life very difficult, and she has a lot of chronic pain. Red is someone who was an artist and has kind of given up art. And so those are the two things they're both working through on the side and then end up, together. So I liked this book, but I would say for a romance, it's very medium paced. It was not like you had to like binge read the end, which I feel like a lot of romances feel like that. It definitely felt like a slower paced romance. I mean, it was at the point where like I had like 50 pages left and I stopped reading it for the day, which I feel like most romances, I don't do that. I like burn through them. I do think if you're a rom-com reader, you'd probably really like this. That's not my usual subgenre. I don't think I'll continue with the series. I liked this one, but I don't think I liked it enough to keep going. But I think if you're a rom-com reader, you like it. Like if one of my friends is like, I want to read a rom-com, I would recommend it because I think the writing's good and the story's good. Just not my usual subgenre. Okay, so now I have 1 week left of February. And I was trying to decide what to read. And I was deciding between the book I picked and Ruthless Vows by Rebecca Ross, which I am reading right now. I've been like I don't know. I like reading books that are emotional, but lately I've been like a little bit sensitive and I haven't wanted to read stuff that I thought is going to make me like sob. But I am reading Ruthless Vows right now, but I'm reading it kind of slowly, purposefully. And so I decided to read The Fox Wife by Yangtze Chu, and it was a really good choice because this book is really, really beautifully written, like gorgeous. And I really loved my time with the story. You have two narrators. One is Bao, and he's a detective who is investigating some like mysterious deaths and disappearances, and people are under the assumption these might be caused by fox shapeshifters. And then your other narrator is someone whose true name is Snow, but goes by a lot of different names in the book. And she is a fox shapeshifter, and she is hunting down the man who killed her child. And if you love folklore, fairy tales, you're going to love this book. It's like steeped with East Asian mythology, which I really, really loved. And I loved following like the fox culture, which was so cool. And the end, I can't give anything away. The end is so beautiful and so perfect. I absolutely loved the way it ended. I would say this isn't a fantasy book you're going to fly through. I think I read it in like 5 days because it's just very beautiful, and you're not going to skim anything because the writing is gorgeous and like every word is so well crafted. And very excitingly, I tweeted that the end made me cry, but like not like cry hard, but like I shed a couple tears. And I tagged Yangtze Chu, and she responded to my tweet and said thank you. And I was like, you wrote a beautiful book, thank you. So yeah, so The Fox Wife is my final book. So this is like one of the shortest wrap-ups I've done in ages. It's March 5th. And I've already read 2 books this month, and I'm about a quarter of the way into Ruthless Vows, and probably a quarter of the way into a romance novel also. So I'm on track to start reading much more furiously this month. But I noticed a couple people who I follow on Twitter, because that's where I'm like most active in social media, said that they also had very like rocky February. So I think maybe there was just something in the air and the atmosphere that was making me not read as quickly as I usually do. But you know, overall, I think of those 4 books, I loved Alcondra for You. I loved The Fox Wife. I liked Chloe Brown, and I just really didn't like The Fury. So, you know, not bad. 75% isn't bad. If you're still hanging out, I would love to know what the best book you read in February was, or if you also had like a really weird month and had a hard time reading, let me know that as well. Or if you read any of these books and what you thought. If you've made it this far and you don't want to write words, let's say goodbye to February with a heart emoji of your choice, because now we're getting into spring. I'm going to start asking for like flower emojis and stuff like that. Trees full of leaves, all those beautiful things that are coming up soon. As always, I hope you're in the middle of a good book, about to start reading a good book, or about to start writing a great book. I'll see you soon.